What do I tell 663,000 people in 2 years or 3 years when President Trump breaks his promise by pushing them off of Medicaid because the funding's not there anymore, guys? In the White House, senators advising the president are not telling him that the effect of this bill is to break a promise. Republicans are about to make a mistake on health care and betraying a promise. It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room when I was there with finance, where he said we can go after waste, fraud, and abuse on any programs. Now, those amateurs that are advising him, not Dr. Oz, I'm talking about White House healthcare experts, refuse to tell him that those instructions that were to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse all of a sudden eliminates a government program that's called the provider tax. We owe it to the American people, and I owe it to the people of North Carolina to withhold my affirmative vote until it's demonstrated to me that we've done our homework. We're going to make sure that we fulfill the promise, and then I can feel good about a bill that I'm willing to vote for. But until that time, I will be withholding my vote.
Senator Thom Tillis took a stand and then took his medicine. The North Carolina Republican announcing he will not seek re-election next year, one day after publicly declaring his opposition to President Trump's sweeping agenda bill.
It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room when I was there with finance, where he said we can go after waste, fraud, and abuse on any programs.
Senator Tillis says he is very concerned about the bill's cuts to Medicaid and the impact that will have on his constituents. President Trump calling Tillis's decision not to seek re-election great news. The group chat is back. I believe the president has also talked about people going against this bill as a betrayal, which is pretty strong language. But I was just talking to Senator Lisa Murkowski last week. She's a Republican from Alaska, and I asked her what it means to go against the president in these moments.
Maybe there are people who are willing to be that voice in the middle, even if it means that, you know, you're roadkill in the middle. That's what happens when you stand in the middle of the road.
It felt like Tillis was playing that out a bit.
He is in a position that feels absolutely deranged to me, where he really does seem to be concerned about what Medicaid cuts are going to do for the people who voted for him and for Donald Trump. And I think he's not seeing a way around that. There is no fix here other than to vote no and, as you said, take his medicine.
And hit the exits, which I kind of, over the years, probably the last decade, we've seen this purge of people who, it's not even the middle anymore. It's just, if you can't handle the heat of Trump.
Or if you show any hint of dissent against Trump, then there might not be room for you in this current version of the Republican Party. You have to fall in line here. And here you see a senator saying that he's pretty much had enough of that, and that it won't be a means to any kind of bipartisan work.
I think Tillis responded, "Thanks for the retirement wishes, Mr. President. Looking forward to working with you on a successful 2026. And I thought that was interesting, him just kind of like giving up the ghost. Someone said that his tie was a YOLO bolo. I can't unhear that.
You know, this feels like it was a slow boil and suddenly the lid has just blown off. There's been some occasions where Tillis has been prepared to criticize the president and he's fallen back in line. He's not one of those sort of Liz Cheney Republicans who went and sought confrontation.
Or even a Murkowski, who people are always like, are you going to vote for this? Are you going to vote for this?
And she has her own particular political constituency in Alaska, which is quite unique to her. I think the question here is going to be interesting, is what this means for the midterms and that seat.
Yeah, so we should say there's a lot of people already lined up, potential candidates for that seat, including Pat Higgin, who I believe might be a Navy SEAL. He's a Republican. And then also former Governor Roy Cooper, a Democrat.
Yeah, and potentially even Lara Trump, the president's daughter-in-law, might be in the frame for that one. We just came off a governor's race where the Republicans chose Lieutenant Governor Robinson, who was a very Trumpy, quite problematic candidate, and they lost that race. The question is, does Tillis's movement here, does that reflect the critical block of thinking in North Carolina that could really reshape this Senate race? Or is it just a personal thing? But it's going to be very close. I think the Democrats especially think if they can get Roy Cooper, who has a history of winning Republican independent votes there, to run, they'll think this is in a very difficult year, this actually might be a winnable
North
seat.
Carolina is always an interesting state to watch in these elections.
Let's get right to CNN's Arlette Saenz on Capitol Hill for what we're about to see. Arlette.
Yeah, John, good morning. The Senate worked through the weekend and they will be back at it this morning. We anticipate that around 9 a.m. they will begin their so-called vote-a-rama. This is a process where senators can bring up amendments to the bill, and it follows a weekend of deal-making and cajoling to try to get Republican senators on board. This bill cleared that key procedural hurdle over the weekend with only 2 no votes, Rand Paul and Thom Tillis. And as you mentioned, Thom Tillis stunned many up here on Capitol Hill by announcing that he would not seek re-election. Now, he told reporters yesterday that he respects President Trump, but he believes that this bill, specifically the concerns about Medicaid, are a mistake. Take a listen to more of what he said in that fiery speech last night.
I believe that we can make sure that we do not break the promise of Donald J. Trump that he's made to the people who are on Medicaid today, Mr. President. But what we're doing, because we've got a view on an artificial deadline on July 4th that means nothing but another date and time. We could take the time to get this right if we lay down the House mark of the Medicaid bill and fix it.
Now, this vote-a-rama that will kick off at 9 a.m. here in the Senate could extend for several hours. We anticipate the Democrats who have railed against the bill, they will present their own amendments, but then there are also a number of amendments that the Republican side will present to try to keep some GOP senators on board. One of those amendments comes from Senator Rick Scott of Florida, who is suggesting reducing the federal matching rate for Medicaid for states that had expanded Medicaid under President Barack Obama. Senator Susan Collins of Maine is also expected to present some amendments. And then there will be a lot of eyes on Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. There were 2 provisions that would have benefited her state that had been introduced to try to win her over, and the Senate parliamentarian ruled that those could not proceed. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in the Senate. They can only afford to lose 3 Republican votes. And then there's still all the work that would need to happen in the House, as that they would also need to clear conservatives, moderate Republicans, all across the spectrum to try to get this bill passed by that July 4th deadline that the president has set.
All right, a lot of activity. Arlette Saenz on Capitol Hill, where we're about to see a lot of arm twisting. Thank you very much, Arlette.